First lesson is coming from page 12 in your book, if you want to open up your book and follow along. This is lesson 1.2, and this is multi-step equations. So, for multi-step equations, it just means that there's more than one thing happening to the variable. Like in yesterday's lesson, you just had one thing happening, and in today's lesson, you might have several things happening. So we're going to start off with an example of 2x minus 13 equals 3. And you'll notice that there are two things happening to the variable. We have something squeezed with x over here with multiplication, and then we also have this subtract 13. So we must undo two operations. So you might say, well, how do I know which one I have to do first? You have to undo in backwards PEMDAS. So order of operations. So if forwards is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, then we have to start down here with add subtract. So whatever is being added or subtracted, you must get rid of that first. So I go over here and I realize that x minus 13 is what I have to get rid of. So just like yesterday, I get rid of it with the opposite operation. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. This cancels. And I'm going to bring down the 2x because I haven't done anything with it. So it's just from right here, I'm just bringing it down. And that's all I have left on the left-hand side, equals, and then I'm going to go ahead and add this, 3 plus 13, 16. So I'm done with my add subtract. Now I'm going to move on to multiply divide. So multiply divide, I can see that right now my variable is being times by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2. My final answer is x equals 8. Another example would look like even more steps. So we have negative 12 equals 9x minus 6x plus 15. And hopefully you can see here that not only do we have multiple things happening to the variables, we've got variables in two different places. Well, because they're the same variable, we can put those things together. So if I have 9x minus 6x, I'm going to go ahead and combine that, bring down the rest of my information that I haven't used, and then you can see it looks a lot like the last one. So again, I've got two operations. I've got x being times by 3, and I also have a plus 15 over here. So again, backwards order of operations says that, whoops, D-A-S, says that I have to get rid of this stuff first. So I'm going to get rid of any add subtract. So happening to the variable, it says plus 15, I'm going to get rid of it. Minus 15 and minus 15. This is gone. Bring down my 3x, I haven't used it yet. Now be careful here, this isn't 3. If you're already in the whole 12 and you lose another 15, you're in the whole negative 27. So I'm done with that. I move on to multiply divide. So in order to undo the times by 3, I'm going to divide each side by 3. And I'm left, that cancels, I'm left with x alone, which is what I want. And I'm left with, oops, I'm left with negative 9. So my final answer is x equals negative 9. A final multi-step equation example, like you might see today, involves the distributive property. And when you have the distributive property, it means that, hopefully you remember this from last year, it means that you must take care of this right here before you start the problem. Reason being that usually on please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, we can go right to here and we can solve that in there. But the problem is there's a variable. So I don't know what 1 minus x is in order to solve that. So instead, in order to get rid of the parentheses, we use what's called the distributive property. The distributive property means you have to pass out whatever's on the outside to the inside. So when we say pass out, well, what operation is in here in between these two things is we don't see one. So it must mean multiplication. So 2 times 1 equals 2, and then 2 times x, all you can do is write 2x. We don't know what x is yet, and then I'm going to bring down my sign. It's subtraction. Now, I do not take this all the way over here because that was not in parentheses. So I'm not going to distribute all the way over there. I'm only going to distribute to parentheses. So I bring this down. I haven't used it yet. And now I'm going to continue with like terms. So I can see here that I have these x's in here, but I have a constant here and I have a constant here. I'm going to go ahead and put those together, so I just have to undo one time. Technically, I could take -3 to the other side, and I could take -2 to the other side, but I'm going to just do it all at one time. So I've got a +2 over here, and I have a +3 here, so I'm going to combine like terms, and I'm going to write -2x, because that comes with my -2x here, plus 5, because of my 2 and my 3, equals -8. Alright, and now you will see we're back to a two-step problem happening to the variable. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of what's being added and subtract. So I'm left with a -2x. I'm just bringing that down, I haven't used it yet, equals -13. Then still what's happening to the x? It's being times by -2, so I'm going to divide by a -2. Divide by a -2. Now, -13 divided by -2, the answer is technically simplified because 13 halves comes out as a decimal. So I'm going to have 13 halves over here as my answer. You could also simplify it to 6.5 if you wanted to, but because the fraction doesn't come out nicely, we can also leave it as a fraction. Now notice I lost my negative signs. A negative divided by a negative cancels out to be just a positive 13 halves. So 13 halves or 6.5 is your answer. Now there are a few cases when backwards order of operations technically does not apply, and it would be a question like m plus 6 all divided by 5 equals 2. So backwards order of operations says we should get rid of that plus 6 on top first, but the problem is this entire thing over here is being divided by 5. So in order to make this problem quite simple, is if this is already being divided by 5, we could undo that divided by 5 right away, and then we would just be left with a one-step problem. So if we've got divided by 5, and this is for the whole thing, notice it's not just under the m, like it's not just here or under the 6, it's under all of it. So because it's under all of it, we have to get rid of it first. So if the whole thing's being divided by 5, I can easily get rid of it by timesing by 5. So this said divided by 5. I'm going to take it times by 5 to cancel. Well, whatever you do on one side, you better do to the other. So now I'm left with m plus 6. You can leave the parentheses or not, it doesn't really matter. And then solve this over here, 2 times 5, 10. Now we're left with basically a one-step problem. The only thing still happening to m is plus 6, so we're going to want a minus 6. M equals 4 is your final answer. Now another example might be a shape, and you are trying to figure out the angles in that. So let's just say we have a triangle, and let's say that this angle right here is 30 degrees, this angle over here is 9x, and this angle here is 30 plus x. Well, in order to